TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
Hey gang, welcome in. It is a Tuesday. It's been a couple days since I've been on the air, so it's always good to be back. It is September 17th, and baseball is winding down. I think there are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15 games left. Let me just pull this up for a second. I think there's like 15 games left. There's some pretty meaningful games so far still to go. But at the same time that I say that, there's some games out there that, just aren't really that meaningful. But at the same time, our job is to figure out what we can bet on and what we can't. So that's partly what we're doing here. The Yankees, that's 140, that's 150. So, there's 12 games to go in some of these games. And, when you start to look at, I saw a thing the other day that said, retweet or whatever if your team is still in the playoff picture. And I'm like, there's not nearly enough teams that are out of the picture on this tweet because they still had teams that were basically mathematically eligible. And the truth of the matter is, as we're kind of coming down to the end, there's only a couple teams in this. And if you look at it from a perspective of the American League, and we go to the wild card, if there's 12, 15 games, we'll just call it 15. The Red Sox have 150 games. Look, if these games are 150, there's only 12 games to go. And if you're 1.5 games out, if you're 2 games out, you got a chance. If you're 4 games out, you really don't have that big of a chance. But that's where the Red Sox are. There's not a lot of room. I mean, they gotta win almost every game, and then they gotta hope the teams in front of them lose a few. The Rays are 6 games out. The Blue Jays are 7. The Rangers are 8. They're done. But mathematically, they're still alive. So that's why that tweet came out that way. And it was like, what? So you've got some really interesting stuff going on in the American League with the Twins. The Twins are basically just giving it away. This is a team that I thought was going to catch Cleveland. I've been saying it for 3 months. And they just never do. They get close. They can get within 2 games, 1 game. I think they even might have tied them. Maybe that was the Royals that tied them. And then Cleveland just keeps pulling away. Now they're in danger of actually not making the playoffs themselves because the Detroit Tigers are only 1.5 games behind the Minnesota Twins. So in that regard, there are some opportunities in the American League that way. In the National League, you're not really in that same hunt other than 2 teams, the Mets and the Braves. One of them's going to make it in and one of them's not. And as you look at that, the Diamondbacks are also a possibility to fall out. So everybody else is done. The Cubs are 5 games out. The Cardinals 7, Reds 9.5, Giants 10. They're not going to make it. So those teams, they're not going to get to where they need to go to make the playoffs. So they'll be golfing soon and doing whatever they do in the off season to make all that stuff work for them. But as we go along here, I think you're going to see. So the purpose of bringing this conversation up is because every time you start to look at numbers and lines and odds and things this time of year, you have to keep that in mind. What is one team trying to do? Is one team trying to make the playoffs It's one team trying to solidify their spot in the playoffs. Is another team trying to play spoiler and stuff like that. Because, there's a lot of kids playing baseball right now in Major League Baseball, guys you never heard of, call-ups. You look at lineups and you try to do different things, and you're like, I never heard of half of these guys. And I do this every day all the time, and I know almost all of them. So I don't know all the minor league guys, I guess maybe as well as some other people might, but I know who I'm supposed to know. But the reality of it is we're coming down to the wire, and, we got to figure out what's important and what's not, because you can get tied up into a lot of stuff. And as you get tied up into these things, you lose focus on what you're supposed to be doing. And so I didn't really, I gave out to my guys, I think one baseball play every day is basically what it's been about. And I gave out 2 today. So we're going to go over those 2 because there's hardly much to talk about. But we're going to talk about the board a little bit today and where I see some problems. Because one of the things that happens, and I guess I wish it wouldn't happen, but it does. There are guys that are on the internet and you go get plays from, and you think that those guys are, hey, these are guys that have been doing baseball all summer. They're good guys. They know what they're doing. They gamble all the time, and whatever. I'm talking guys like with the Action Network and guys that you see on all kinds of different shows and stuff like that. Here's the reality. Those guys aren't professional gamblers. They make their money by being given some money to do the shows they do. So they're content creators. That's what they are. They're not gamblers. So you have to be very careful. And Sean Zerillo, I'm going to call him out in this particular case because he still goes out and gives out, 6, 7 plays a day. And, overs, unders, totals, half units, quarter unit, whatever he's doing. It's just a mess. But the reality is you have to be very careful, because if you follow the advice, and, he's going to have all these little verbiages and nice little words and different things that make him sound really smart. He's not gambling his money, and he's not making bets to earn a living. It's way, way different when you bet for a living than it is to when you got to pay your bills because of what you win. It's way different than it is to just come on and go blah, 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 and then we like, okay, whatever happens, and then I'll go come on and do it again tomorrow. So be very careful of what you listen to. And I'm not saying I'm the best guy in the world to listen to. I'm just trying to say is be careful what you do listen to, because you can be very steered the wrong way and not even know you're being steered that way, because the content you're listening to is entertainment content. It's not actually somebody betting to make a living. And that's that would be my only advice to anybody in these lanes, that you are trying to I don't want to say be like, but you're trying to learn from, and or that you're trying to emulate, or you're trying to copy their plays or whatever. Just make sure you're trying to do it with people that actually make a living doing this. Because if you're in, and be honest, baseball for me this season has been up and down and up and down and up and down and kind of flat. I mean, I haven't made a lot of money. It depends on how you bet to make money. And I always tell you guys, one of the greatest things that you guys can do to help me, help the show, or whatever, is go to my website, MLB-Data, and be a member. It costs you $100. It's a whole year for $100. I don't use your $100 to make my bets. It's not my bankroll. I can't afford to use that $100 as the bankroll. It's not enough money. So, if I have 15 guys that are part of that program, that's what I got. I don't have 3,000 people that are following me along with what we're doing and have signed up. I have 15 guys, 10 guys, whatever it is. I don't know. So I'm not making money that way. And what I'm trying to suggest is that I'm not trying to make money off of you. I'm trying to help you make money, show you how to do it and how I do it. So anyway, point being is just be careful what you follow, be careful what you listen to. So let's get into some of this a little bit. So the games that I actually bet don't start for a little while. So I got a little time. So in terms of a little bit of time, I wanted to share where I thought some of this stuff will get you in trouble. So one of the games I think is, you can talk about the Atlanta Braves. So the Atlanta Braves are the first team out in the playoffs. So currently, they're trying to win every game they can win, and they're trying to do everything they can. However, they are also in a spot where they're a little pitching deficient. So Grant Holmes is going to start, and he's a long reliever, and he's started 4 times throughout the season. In those 4 starts, the Braves are 1 win, 3 losses, even though he's a pretty decent pitcher. Now, they're going to face the Reds today in Williamson. And this number, where's my numbers over here? This number this morning when I put it in here was Atlanta minus 117. And now it's Atlanta, and it opened 115. And now it's Atlanta minus 138. So there's some run on Atlanta, which makes sense, right? Atlanta needs to win this game. However, if I were to go and say to you, let me pull up the right stuff. If I were to go and say to you, Grant Holmes in his last games he's pitched 8 times, 9.2 innings. So it's all been in relief. In those 9.2 innings, he's given up 16 hits. Okay, that's almost 2 hits per inning. Even if he's going to be an opener and only pitch 1 or 2 innings, it's very likely that he could be behind when he comes out, and the next guy comes in, and the bullpen day or whatever it's going to be for the Braves, they're in trouble. So he's a 143 SOPS plus, so he's 43% worse than an average pitcher over his last 28 days. And everybody's betting on these guys like they're just an automatic win. And the reality is Williamson in his last 28 days, now you got to understand he's only pitched twice. So it's kind of hard to get a gauge of, okay, where's he at? Because truth is, he was on the disabled list most of the season, came off the disabled list, has pitched halfway decent. He's a 58, 42% better than an average pitcher at controlling the opponent's offense. And the Braves don't hit. So, you can say what you want to, but the Atlanta Braves are not an offensive juggernaut. And I'm not saying the Reds are either. What I'm trying to say is that this run up of the minus 138 now that you got to pay is way out of the league. If you're paying 138 now, I wouldn't necessarily mind it at 117, 115 like it was this morning, but 138 it's too far gone. Like you missed it. And we're going to talk after the baseball. We're going to do some football stuff. Not so much specific gaming. Well, maybe some games, but I've got a few other tidbits to talk about today. And one of them is going to be numbers matter, especially in spreads. So, but in this case, numbers matter too, because if you don't set your own numbers, which most of you probably don't, I mean, it's hard to learn how to, it's kind of one thing to learn how to make a power rank and then, subtract the 2 and you get a line, this team's favored by 6 or whatever. Because my power rank said it was 194 or something. But when you're sitting there going, well, what is the number should be? My number on the Braves today was 122. So if it was 115, 117, there's a little value on the Braves. Well, now it's all the way up to 138. So the value is now flipped. There's value to bet the Reds. Now, I'm not suggesting to go out and bet the Reds, but I'm saying past the game. But what I'm trying to show is when you're betting these games and betting on sports, one of the things you have to understand is what's the real odds numbers, what's the real thing, and then based on that, where did the numbers go, and should I follow the steam or not? And in this particular case, I would say don't follow the steam. It's a problem. So that was game number one that I thought was okay. It's an early game. It's getting ready to start. I hope if you bet on the Braves today, I hope you do well. I hope you win the bet. And I hope you paid, minus 115, 116, 117, 120, whatever. I hope you didn't pay 138. But as we go down through some of these bets and some of this board, I think, one of the games that I was looking at was anytime that Blake Snell pitches, you want to be betting on Blake Snell. I mean, he's just that caliber of a pitcher. So I was looking at this game with the Giants, and they play the Orioles. And I'm looking at this, and I'm going, what's really going on here? Because, this is a small line. Blake Snell, the number right now for Blake Snell is 119, 114. So we'll call it 116, right? Blake Snell's 116. Well, it opened at 120. And when I saw it and I put it in my spreadsheets and everything this morning, it was 114. So it hasn't moved a whole lot. So here's what you run into when you're trying to bet this particular game. And I didn't give this out. I don't mind it. If you want to bet Blake Snell, it's not going to bother me. He's the best pitcher that's out there in this game. He's a 57 SOPS plus in his last 28 days. So he's 43% better than average pitcher. I mean, that's pretty damn good. He's and especially good at night. Like he's a 44 SOPS plus at night. They can't see it. Whatever, they can't pick up the ball. So I like Blake Snell. Now I didn't like him when he was costing money and wasn't right and didn't get out of spring training very well. But I mean, he's doing great right now, and you want to be on him when he's doing great. I mean, Albert Suarez, who he's going to face tonight, is an amazing pitcher. He's 40 years. He's almost. I shouldn't say that. He's not 40 years old. Hey, Marty Lowe, welcome in. How you doing? Thanks for stopping by. We'll get to football here in a little bit for you. But I think when you're talking about Suarez, he's a 129, so he's 29% worse than an average pitcher. But for the season, he's a 100. So he's an average guy. And really, without him, the Orioles would be in big trouble because, they've had some injuries that have happened to their pitching staff. And he's been the guy that's just kind of come in and filled in and kept them together and kept that team going along pretty well. But here's where I run into the problem with betting on Blake Snell in this game. The first problem that I'm running into is the Giants in the last 20 games they've played, they've only won 7 times. They're 7-13. And truth be known, I didn't go back and look. I know Blake Snell's last start wasn't that good, but in those 20 games, Blake Snell's probably accounted for at least 2 of those 7 wins himself, 2 or 3. So, you're sitting there going, okay, well, in the last 10 games, they've only won 4 times. But the Orioles in their last 10 games only won 3 times. This is a team trying to win the American League East. It's not, I mean, these teams that need to be really playing well are not. So it's an amazing thing that some of the stuff is going on that way. So pitching wise, you got a big edge with Blake Snell. But what I saw was, his metrics, he's got green metrics, which means they're in the top 25% of all of baseball when it comes to his xFIP number and his FIP number. And it's an amazing way he gets there. So remember what FIP is, right? FIP is fielding independent pitching, right? So how does this pitcher get on the mound and dominate from the mound without having to use his defense? So it only counts home runs, strikeouts, and walks. That's all it does. It doesn't count any balls in play, none of that stuff. So it's a good metric, and I really like it because if you're good at FIP and the predictive measure of FIP called XFIP. If you're really good at those, typically you're going to dominate from the mound and be one of the pitchers you want to bet on. So I'm always looking for green numbers in those metrics. And he's got them, which I knew he would, but he's got them. And here's how he gets them. His walk rate is horrible, 5.09 walks per 9 innings right now. He is walking guys. Now, I will say this. I don't like guys that walk people because it's already hard enough to get as many guys out that you have to get out. And if you walk guys and then give up a couple hits, you get a couple runs. So it's hard to back a guy that walks guys. But here's how he does his thing. He has 0 home runs in the last 30 days. 0. And if you watch the games from a perspective of every time a score happens and you go back and look at it and you think about, okay, well, because one of the things I look at is how many hits does a team have and how many opportunities do they have to score? Because that's what I'm really betting, right? I'm betting how many opportunities one team has to score versus how many opportunities the other one has. So I need to know the pitchers limiting opportunities or giving opportunities and the offense being able to generate their own opportunities, right? So because I can't predict who's going to come through and who's not. So as you start to look at the scores and you start to realize if your team's batting and they don't hit home runs, you're not going to win the game. I mean, it's just the way it is. Your team needs to hit home runs. If they don't hit home runs, you're really not going to win. So when you see a pitcher that allows 0 home runs in a month, he's a guy you want to bet on, right? I mean, that's the way this works. So that's why I say I don't mind anybody betting on Snell today, and especially at the number where he's at. But I'm going to get into why I didn't in a minute. So his batting average against is only 188. I mean, the league average is like 240, 242, 243, whatever it is. So when you're 188, man, you're not getting on base, but he puts you there because he walks you. Now, the reality is if he walks you and then he goes in his strikeout rate, oh, my God. In 9 innings, he'll strike out 12.91 batters. Raggins, who's pitching today, is 12.81. You strike out 13 guys in 9 innings. I mean, you're not getting on base. So that's why the batting average is, his batting average is low. He strikes everybody out and he doesn't give up home runs. That's why his FIP numbers are so low, even though he walks everybody. So he'll put guys on and then strike everybody out. I mean, that's what he does. So he is less a threat of giving the opponent opportunities to score because of the ability to strike guys out. That's basically what I'm saying. And because of that, he's a guy you want to bet on. And, you would think, well, his WPA is probably pretty good. Well, it's not really that good when you think about it. I mean, if you make a lot of good pitches and you strike people out and you get outs, you're going to get a positive WPA, winning percent added. You're going to do better. If you make mistakes, right, you're going to give up home runs and you're going to give up lots of hits. Well, we just said his batting average against is 188 and he didn't give up any home runs. So he's making mistakes, but not as many as he gets the others. So he's got a positive number. It's 0.29. It's not in the top 25% of baseball. For the season, it's a 1.04, which is barely there, but it's there. So I like Blake Snell. I mean, Blake Snell's a great pitcher. My opinion is that he's the right side tonight. However, the reason I didn't bet him is because Albert Suarez has a WPA of 0.70. That's in the top 25% of all. He makes good pitches. He's tough. He's an average strikeout guy with average metrics. He don't walk people. So he's a guy that can't afford, because of the strikeouts situation that he has, he can't afford to put people on and then go strike people out because he doesn't do that, right? He doesn't throw the ball 98 miles an hour and put it wherever he wants and have a major slider and all the other things that Blake Snell does. So he's at a spot where he has to pitch differently. He can't allow walks. He has to make great pitches, and that's what he does. So sometimes he's good, sometimes he's not. His last time out was a good start, but that's an offset to the bad start he had the time before that. So the theory here is that he's going to be an average to good pitcher tonight. Blake Snell could be an average to good pitcher tonight. So pitching wise, I think your matchup is a little bit. Blake Snell is the better pitcher, but Suarez will hang in this game. And especially when you consider the offense that's going on for the Giants. The Giants are 26th out of 30 teams in offense. So they score 3 runs a game right now. Now, the Orioles aren't much better. I mean, the Orioles are 18th, and they only scored 2.8 runs a game. And so it's one of those spots where you sit here and go, well, I think there's at least some value on this spot. And, my number said minus 114 or whatever it is. What was my number? I think it was like somewhere in that neighborhood. My number was 117. And the listed odds are like 116. So, I mean, it's just kind of a wash. But where I say I don't think there's a problem here, I think if you bet Blake Snell, I think there's not an issue with that other than expect this game to be like 2-1. And when I'm sitting here and I'm making this bet, I want Blake Snell to be in a spot where I think they're going to win 5-1 because they're going to be able to hit the other side. And if you're not hitting, I don't want to back you. So, I've seen it, with Tampa so many times. And the Florida Marlins, when they got all their pitchers, they can shut you down, Alcantara and all those guys, they can pitch. And if they're going to win games, it's 2-1 or 3-2. And, that's kind of what this reminds me of. And if it's 3-1, 3-2, 2-1 kind of game, it's sort of a coin flip. And the number sort of says that 115, 116, 117. So even though Blake Snell is the better pitcher, the right side, I think that, you just have to be careful on what you're betting. I don't mind it. I think that's the right thing to do. If you wanted to bet it. But at the same time, what your expectation of the game needs to be is it's more of a coin flip, and I don't really want to get involved in a coin flip right now. So that was food for thought on that game. Some of these games just started, so I'm not going to go over the Dodger game. One of the things I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of with the Dodgers, Bobby Miller's pitching for the Dodgers today, and everybody, my opinion was he was getting better. And he's been struggling. And if I look at his numbers, Bobby Miller's a 159 SOPS plus in the last 28 days. For the season, he's a 164. So he ain't getting any better. 150, he's 59% worse than an average pitcher. The Marlins are 139, the pitcher. So this could have some runs in this game. But then I think the line's like 9.5 the total. So I'm like, that all makes sense to me. So there's no value in betting a minus 200, betting on the run line, trying to do all this stuff. If you're going to bet the run line, your pitcher that is pitching needs to be able to hold the opponent to 1-2 runs, 2-3 runs, because you're expecting your side to score 7-8 runs, right? You don't want it to be a 7-5 game that you win. You want it to be a 7-1 game that you won, and when you bet the run line. So I skipped over that one. Now here's a game. What time does that game go? Cleveland 6:40. So this game just started. There's probably a lot of people that bet Cleveland today. The Twins are, like I said, the Twins are just giving up the ghost right now. The Twins are, and I was going to bet Cleveland too. I was going to do it. I didn't. And here's some of why I didn't. if I go to here and I look at this, Zebby Matthews is kind of a highly touted pitcher for the Twins. He's a young kid. He's made 6 starts. He's won twice. They're 2-4. That's not good. So his SOPS plus in the last 28 days is a 209. So he's 100% worse than an average pitcher. That's you cannot support that. So Twins are out of the question, right? So let's go look at the Cleveland side, right? So the Cleveland side, I'm looking at Williams. Williams is a 100. So he's dead even, dead average. He's a 110 for the season. So he's an average to above average bad pitcher. That's what he is. But he's made 14 starts for Cleveland Guardians. Now remember, they're the number 1 team in the American League Central. They're on pace to win, I think, 92, 93 games. He's made 14 starts. In the 14 starts that he's made for the Guardians, he's won 4 times. They're 4-10. So now you go and say, all right, well, maybe the line's pretty decent and I can still get involved in this game. But it's not. So the line for Cleveland, 134. The opener was 125. And I sit there and I go, nope, I'm not paying that for a guy that's above average. And I'm going to have to rely on offense to win the game. If Zebby Matthews doesn't pitch well, I get that. Well, Williams might not pitch well either. So you're going to have scores and scores and scores on both sides. And then the only advantage that you run into then is the Cleveland bullpen. That's it. That's what you got. And that might be enough, but unless it's a playoff game or something, I'm not betting it. It's minus 134. It's too high for me to get involved. My number was 116, Cleveland. So anyway, that was why I didn't bet that game. So then I came down to another game that's getting ready to go. This game goes, I think, at 7, though, right? Where is it? Tampa Bay. There it goes. It goes 6:50. So this game's getting ready to go. This is Pavetta, 137, 134. So we're going to say Boston's a favorite, 134. So what if I told you that Shane Baz, who's pitching for the Rays today, his SOPS plus in the last 28 days is the best of all the pitchers on the board today. So that means he controls the opponent's offense better than any other pitcher that's out there on pitching today. He's a 34. So he is 66% better than average pitcher. So then, Scott, why didn't you bet it? Well, I didn't bet it because Tampa Bay can't hit. And if Pavetta goes off and Pavetta pitches well, he can dominate this game. So I would prefer to play this game under the number, but I think it was 7 or 7.5. And I'm like, I'm not going to get that. I'm not going there either. So I just decided to pass, right? So you start running into some of these spots. Pavetta's a 115 in the last 28 days, SOPS plus. So he's 15% worse than an average pitcher. And he's 101 for the season. So he's average. But he's got, what's interesting. So let's just say it this way. Shane Baz in his last 4 starts, 24 innings pitched, 10 hits allowed. 10. That's it. And we just talked about how great Snell was. 23 innings pitched, which are 1 short of Shane Baz. 16 hits allowed and 13 walks. So Shane Baz has pitched much better than any of these other guys. And so you're either going to support the Rays or you're going to pass on the game. And then I looked it up, and I'm like, Tampa Bay scoring 2.5 runs a game. I can't back that. They rank 20th in offense. Boston ranks 22nd, but Boston's scoring 3.7 runs a game. So Baz is going to have to work his butt off. So I'm like, maybe he doesn't want to today. They're out of the playoffs, both these teams. So what difference does it make? So I'm like, it doesn't matter. maybe this is a mid-season game that you might bet. But as we're coming down to the wire, I'm like, nah, I passed on that one. Trying to get down to some of these other games. The Wheeler-Montas game, I just passed altogether. Wheeler is the favorite, should be the favorite. But I got to tell you, Frankie Montas is pitching better than he's pitched all season right now in this window. So, and the Brewers just and the Phillies, they're just such weird teams. The Brewers just go win games and they find ways to hit enough to win. And the Phillies, with the lineup they have and the stuff that they got, they just go out and find ways to not win games. Of course, when you look at the standings, the Phillies are ahead, but they're not that much ahead of the Brewers. So, it is what it is. I just decided not to go there. But here's a game I did bet. So the Kansas City Royals are playing the Detroit Tigers. And this is Reagan's against the Mize. And I get it. This is a little bigger number. My number that I got was, I think, 146. I'm trying to remember what the number was. And I think it's like 150 right now. And I'm okay with the 150. My number on the game, if I go there, if I get to where I need to go, my number on the game is 182. So I like Kansas City in this spot. I like them actually a lot in this spot. If I look at the number as it kind of comes out, it's 154, so it's 155. I know that that's not what everybody wants to bet, but it's a spot. The next one I'm going to give you is an underdog. So, if you play this one, great. If you play the other one, you got a favorite and an underdog. So here's the deal. Let me get back to my numbers. You have a pitcher in Reagan's who he's an ace for them. He's probably, I don't know, maybe the top 15 pitcher in all of baseball. But I don't like that he plays for the Royals, who is a pretty good team. He's pitched 30 times, and the team's 15-15 in his starts. I want to see him be more dominant on the win side. But here's what I will say. He's a 74 SOPS plus, so he's 26% better than average pitcher in the last 28 days. And for the whole season, he's a 78. So he's not much different than he's consistent, and I like that consistency. The Royals have a pretty strong home field advantage where they score a lot of runs. They play a different brand of baseball there, more energy, more offense. And the pitchers typically don't do as well there. But he's a SOPS plus 90 at home, which is a good number for Royals home pitchers. I think Singer's the only one that's even remotely close to that. And he's an 86 at night. So he's consistent in what he is. Now, on the other side, you have Casey Mize. And Casey Mize, this will be his fourth start since like the second time he's come off the disabled list. He hasn't been good. He's been pretty bad. He's a SOPS plus 133, so he's 33% worse than an average pitcher. On the road, he's a 131, so there's some consistency there. And at night, he's a 140. So he's consistently 30% worse than an average pitcher all across the board. And then I started looking at it and going, the Tigers are pretty hot, 13-7. 7-3 in the last 20, 7-3 in the last 10 games, and the Royals are kind of more 500-ish. And so I'm sitting there going, well, I think let me look at Reagan's in a little better spot here. So I started looking at it, and Reagan's is average metrics. He's not top 25% metrics, and I was kind of surprised at that because I thought he was going to be there. Left-handed guy throws 98 miles an hour. But he's a 397 xFIP, 348 Sierra, 317 FIP number. Where you run into the problem is that measures up to what Mize is, even though Mize has been bad. Mize 372, 388. What the problem with Mize is his FIP number is 536. That's To be honest, well, it's not the worst on the board today. Miller and Matthews are both worse than that number, but 536 is not very good. And that all comes from his home run rate. He gives up 2.25 home runs per 9 innings, which is, top 25 worst in baseball. So the Royals scoring runs on offense at home have an opportunity against Mize that way. The other thing that I look at in these spots is how do these guys get guys on base, right? So Reagan's 1.88 batting average against. It's hard to get on base against him. Now, he does have, I shouldn't say, he does have a little bit of a walks problem, 4.5 walks per 9 innings. He'll put a guy on base, but again, he's a strikeout guy like Snell. His is 12.81 strikeouts per 9 innings. So he's just kind of like Snell, just not quite as polished yet. So that's kind of what you're looking at in this pitcher. He's pitched already twice against the Tigers. And in those starts, he's a game score of 57, 50's average. So he's well above average. And Mize has pitched twice against Kansas City. And he's a game score 29 against them. Kansas City hits him. And he's very hittable. His batting average against is 271 or 262, which is, and his hard hit rate is the highest I've seen of a pitcher for a while. It's 57.7%. And, the harder you hit a ball, the more damage that you can do with it. But it's not even so much about damage when you hit it so hard. It gets through the infield. So the fielders don't have the time to react to get the ball to throw you out at first base. So there's a lot of things, and he makes mistakes, right? His WPA is a minus 0.30, and you want to bet against those guys. And his 3 starts since he's come off the disabled list, 44, 38, 49 is his game score. Not even a 50 up there. His season average is a 46. So Casey Mize has been a hittable. He's been a guy I've loved to bet against all season long, and I'm betting against him again. So I did bet Kansas City Royals in this spot. Offensively, Detroit should be a little better, but they're not magnificently better. They're 7th in baseball right now in the last 7 days, and the Royals are 10th. So not too bad. And the Royals are scoring 5 runs a game, and the Tigers 4.9. So I looked at that and I thought, well, I don't think the Tigers are going to get to that number, and I certainly think that the Royals could probably exploit that number. So the Royals, based upon who they're facing, can do better. And I think that the Tigers are going to have to really work to get to where they need to go against Reagan. So I bet the Kansas City Royals tonight in that spot. And that was sort of this spot there that I bet. There was some other stuff that I thought was interesting. So Toronto plays Texas. 2 teams that are out of it. So just kind of depends on how you feel about betting on out of it teams. Bassett in his last 28 days, his last month, he's been really good. And he hasn't been good all season, but he's been really good. Bassett is a 99, so a little bit below average at SOPS plus. 109 is his season number. Evaldi was a 77 and an 84 SOPS plus. So 77 is the 28-day one, 84 is the season-long one. He's just a better pitcher, and he's a bulldog. But he also is pretty good at home. So I decided I didn't want to bet on it because Bassett in 29 starts, he's only won 11 times, so he's 11 and 18. And Evaldi in 26 starts, 15 and 11. You want it to be higher than that, but 15-11 is good. I mean, these guys, you win more than you lose. As a gambler, that's all you want. You want a guy that pitches and does better. But where this game gets interesting is 33% a better offense versus right-handed pitchers for Toronto than an average offense. They're number 1 in baseball over the last month against right-handed pitchers. And that's where I thought the edge was. I thought the edge was with Toronto's offense against the anemic minus 7% that the Texas Rangers have. And I thought, maybe that was a good enough edge to bet it. And then as I started breaking down Evaldi, I just thought Evaldi was the kicker is his last start. Evaldi threw a game score 29. That's an outlier low. He's not going to throw another 29. He's going to throw an offset to that game. So he's probably going to throw – this is probably going to be a low-scoring, not many runs kind of game where the offenses get struggles by both good pitchers. And I'm like, okay, there's another coin flip. But I was wanting to bet the Reds or the Blue Jays side, which gives me the underdog. And I'm like, I'm okay with that. But I just didn't find enough value to actually pull the trigger. But I liked the spot. So if you're thinking about betting on that game, I think your better way to go is to bet Blue Jays in that spot. Another game that kind of is of interest is the New York Yankees going to Seattle. This is heel against Woo, and it's not that often that you get the Yankees as a small favorite. But here's where I can't back the Yankees. When I saw this and I looked at Brian Woo's home run numbers, I was like, holy shit, the Yankees, that's all they do is hit home runs. But he gives up 2 home runs per 9 innings, so he makes mistakes that way. But at the same time that he makes mistakes, he makes more quality pitches than he doesn't. But he's past his innings limit, and it's showing bad. Heel is in the top 25% worst of all of baseball in all the metrics I look at. So xFIP 4.91, Sierra 5.11, and FIP numbers of 5.03. His walk rate 6.43 walks per 9 innings. So he puts guys on. His batting average is still good, but he puts guys on. He's hard to hit. If you don't throw strikes and you put guys on base, all it takes is a base hit, and you got to run with a walk. So it's and then situationally, when I looked at it, Brian Woo was a 74 of OPS plus, so he's 26% better than average pitcher, and Heel was an 86, so he's 14% better. It's very similar, but Brian Woo at home, holy cap, 19 when he pitches in Seattle. So that means he's 81% better than average pitcher at home. And I just said, okay, I can't back the Yankees tonight, because I was going to try to do that because I thought Heel was, a little better than what he showed. And then all of a sudden it goes and says, well, Brian Woo's probably not going to give up home runs at home. And second, Heel could go walk everybody, and then all of a sudden you get a couple hits and Seattle wins this game. And it's way more. Well, I shouldn't say. Seattle's still trying to make playoffs and solidify their spots, and they're making a run, doing whatever they can to get in. They're the next team out past Detroit, so they're trying to get there. These are big games for them. They're 12-8 in their last 20 and 7-3 in the last 10, so they're playing like it too. So, and offensively for Seattle, they rank 3rd. And offensively for the Yankees, they rank 27th. So I'm just like, there's no way I can back the Yankees. So if I was going to back any side, I would back the Seattle side. Anyway, but here's the last game that I bet, and I actually bet this game. This is Houston plays in San Diego tonight, and this is Brown against King. And King's been great all season long. He's a SOPS plus 84, 16% better than average pitcher. That's great. And it's great to see, because, he was getting an opportunity that he wasn't getting with the Yankees. So he's showing what he can do. He's made 28 starts for San Diego. They've won 17 of those starts. So there's 17-11 in his starts. Really, really good. Brown, on the other side, has been the best pitcher in baseball the last month. So I'm going to write that. He's a SOPS plus 49. He's 51% better than an average pitcher in the last month. And King is showing signs that he's pitched a lot. He's a 111 in his last 28 days. So he's 11% worse than an average pitcher. So So now you have a guy who's pitched great all season, who's kind of wearing out, and you got a guy that is just dominating baseball right now. So I liked the idea that we're in a spot here where Houston, as an underdog, and they're a small underdog, but Houston's got the better pitcher, and I can spec that. When I looked at the numbers, 11-9 in the last 20 for Houston, 13-7 for San Diego, so similar results. Both teams are winning offensively. Houston ranks 11th. San Diego ranks 4th. San Diego's only scoring 4.8 runs a game, though. And Houston is scoring 4.3, so very, very close in terms of how they're scoring. And then starting pitching-wise, Brown, who I told you has been the best pitcher in baseball for the last month. If I go back 7 starts, because that's kind of where I look at this, his game score is 66, 60, 72, 59, 69, 71. His last start's a 35. There's the offset. So that means he had his bad start. Now you can go back and support him again. So that's what I liked about this spot is he's off of a spot where he pitched a poor game. That was an outlier low, outlier bad. I think that you're going to have a possibility to have another 60-plus kind of performance from him, which means you're going to have probably a lower scoring game, and you've got the Astros with a pretty decent bullpen. So I liked the Astros in the game. I got him at plus 109. I think the number right now, if I go to this, come on. I hit the button and it pulled it up the wrong way. So the number right now, you got 116, so you can get him at plus 106. I think that's good, and I think that was the bet I made. So I gave out 2 plays today on the bets that I gave to my guys, the Royals and the Astros. But I didn't have any problem if you're betting on Snell if you wanted to do it that way. And the other one was I didn't think Bassett was a bad thing until I started really looking into it a little bit. But I still think value-wise it's a good play. So that was really all I had in terms of baseball. But I did want to cover a couple things going into this week for football, and sort of a hey, this is where things are at in the football world. I should probably do it this way too, just so that I have my numbers a little bit more readily available to tell you. Where is there? We're gonna go pull up wager book. All right, so my NFL action has been really good. I've been really good with the NFL, and I know that a lot of people haven't. I saw a tweet today that showed that so far this season, Major League Baseball, from what ticket counts are or whatever, the public, if you will, are off to the worst start they've ever had in 20 years. It's not a good football season start, and I see a lot of people football-wise not doing very well, especially in the NFL. So I am right now in football 7-3 in the NFL. I'm really 8-3. I made a bet yesterday. I didn't release to the guys. So it's one of the things I run into is when you bet for a living, you make bets, and sometimes you make bets. I wouldn't say spur of the moment, but you make bets at certain time frames that it's not like a planned release time, and it's not very fair to sit there and go, oh, I made a bet 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the game. So I don't count that in a record, but theoretically it's I'm 8-3. And luckily, it's the way it worked out yesterday. I was on Atlanta, and holy shit, that game was unbelievable. So college football, though, I would say I'm 8-7 in college football and 7-3 in the NFL. But there was a couple of things that I thought that I've come across that I wanted to express, because one of them is, and I've got a tweet pulled up, and I wanted to share it in a sense that I don't think people are thinking of this. And I was thinking about it, but I didn't really do the research. So heaven forbid somebody did the research for me. Isn't that great? Says in 2023 in the NFL, 28 games landed on 6, 30, and 31. And so 28 games landed on 6, the number 6, as a spread margin, okay? And 31 games on 7. So think about that. 6 now becomes a more prevalent number based off of 2023. But it's really showing that even more so in 2024. In 2 weeks, 7 games have landed on 6, and only 4 games have landed on 7. So what I wanted to express to everyone watching, especially in the NFL, when you're doing these games on spreads, the number matters. So the most important thing you can do is bet the key numbers on or off based off of whether you're betting the favorite or the dog, right? So if you're betting a game and you want to bet the favorite at -2.5, there's way more value in by betting it at 2.5. Don't ever buy down to that 2.5. Don't do that, because that's you don't have enough hold in the bets to be buying points. So don't do that. If the number's there, then you take it. If it's not there, you find another one, or you just watch the game. You'll lose more money over the course of 1,000 bets by buying half points. So don't. So that's sort of premise number 1. Premise number 2. If you're betting a favorite and you minus 2.5, not a problem. If the key number is 3 and you bet it at 3.5, you better be on the dog. I mean, that's just the way it works. Now, having said that, there are times when you can do certain things. So I bet a game earlier this year. I think it was Arizona. Maybe it was just this last week where Arizona. No, it wasn't this. Well, no, it wasn't this last week. I think it might have been. Well, maybe, I don't remember. I had Arizona plus 2.5, and I took it that. It wasn't getting to 3. That was the best number I could get. It was the best number that was going to be available, so I bet it. They won outright, but that was my thought before I bet the play. I bet on the Arizona Cardinals. They won the game outright, and I was getting 2.5 points. So I was like, I didn't get to the 3, but it was the best you could do. And sometimes that's going to be good enough, and especially if you think they're going to win outright. And that brings up another thing. If you're betting small underdogs at plus 2.5, plus 3, you better think they can win the game. If you don't think they can win the game and you're only betting it because the number's 3, then I would pass. That they need to be able to basically win the game at that small of a number, because one play can turn the outcome of that game for you or against you, and that's where you're getting those extra points that make it matter, right? So the 6 and the 7 have now become almost like the 3 and the 4, but it's not. The 4 has become less important over time, and the 6 has become way, way more significantly important. And the kind of reasoning behind it is the overtime rules. It's the go for 2 policies. Lots of just different things that have changed that outcome. And I would say the biggest, most important reason is not those 2. It's been the kickers. The kickers now make 50-yard field goals like they were extra points. They don't miss. I mean, you got guys lining up for 68-yard field goals now. I mean, that's kind of the new realm of how far back they're going to kick from. So I think when you're thinking about the NFL, 6 has to become a key number for you, as much as 7. 6 and 7 are key numbers. 4, I would say, is a less key number, and 3 is your key number, right? So 3, 6, and 7 are your numbers. And if you kind of flow with that, you might find yourself in a better spots as you're going down. So another thing that I wanted to share, and this one's in relation to college football, because I was watching something that came up as to a problem that I was having. So when you make your power rankings and your numbers and you chart things out, you make adjustments. And it's traditional over the past 10 years, 15 years to be very conservative in the adjustments that you make. So, for example, if a team power rank is, I don't know, let's say it's 75. That's the power rank number you gave it. It's just an arbitrary number. It's 75. And let's just say you're going to adjust that number lower. So ideally, you adjust it by 1 point or 1.5 points. So they go from 75 to 74 or 73.5. And you might adjust the other side up a little bit because of how the outcome of that game went. So it didn't matter sort of how a team looked. So, for example, we got Florida State just getting their ass handed to them every time they play. And they were a top 10 team. So traditionalists are going to go and say, and me too, and you get in trouble with this, and we're going to adjust them. And you might even go, well, I'm going to get aggressive here and adjust them by 2 points, 3 points in your power rankings. It's not enough. It's not even close. So what I'm going to suggest is, as you're doing these things, and especially with teams that don't look good, there's a reason they don't look good, and you need to be way more aggressive with it and just bite the bullet and adjust them 6 points, maybe 7 points, maybe a total touchdown comparative to where they were when you thought about them before. And here's why. The transfer portal has created urgency in teams, fairness in other teams, but it's also made it so that the team is less continuity than it had. You're not in a program anymore. You're on a team. You know, they always say, "Oh, we're going to build a program." Well, no, you're not. You're if your kid that you brought into that school is not good enough to play, you're going to go try to bring somebody else in. It's just the way it works in college football. But if you're getting lambasted, it's because the kids you brought in aren't good enough to hold up, even though they were supposed to be. Your coaching, your kids, your system of how you are handling those things are not good enough, and you need to pay the penalty. The depth is now less in college football, except Texas. You know, how often can you have a Heisman front runner quarterback leave and have another quarterback come in and not miss a beat and actually get better? It doesn't happen. So when you start to think about it, right, and think about the real structure of how these teams are being put together, like Ohio State. Ohio State's a really good football team. Well, their quarterback's not any good, right? He's a senior quarterback, came over from Kansas State. And why did he come from Kansas State? Because he wasn't going to be the quarterback for Kansas State this year. So all of these nil guys, you got to remember, shouldn't say not all of them, most of them, are in a spot where they were going to lose their job. Somebody else was better than them. So they go find a new home somewhere, and maybe they're really good at that new home, or maybe they're just good enough to get by. And that's what I think Ohio State has at quarterback. Somebody that's just good enough to help them get by. They're going to have to win on defense, and they're going to have to win on running the ball, and especially when they play somebody good. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of folds out. And then, a team like Miami just hit the jackpot. They were able to get, or out in the Pac-12, you had teams that disbanded. So you had two teams left over, Oregon State and Washington State. So the best players on those teams, they don't want to be there anymore. Why would you want to be in a conference of two? So I get it. They're trying to build a new conference, and they're trying to make Pac-12 again and do all this other stuff, and bring in the likes of BYU and the Mountain West teams. But Cam Ward comes out of Washington State as probably the best quarterback available, goes to Miami and looks like a Heisman guy, right? And Miami's doing great. But that's a different scenario than the Kansas State quarterback coming out and going to Ohio State because he wasn't going to be able to play anyway. The guy who was replacing him is going to win the job. So you have the same issue with the kid in Oregon State. It's a 1,000-yard running back 2 years in a row. Goes out, says, I don't want to play for Oregon State anymore. We're not in a conference anymore. We're not going to be winning national championships. We're not going to play big bowl games. Goes to Miami too. So Miami was able to get those two players, incorporate them into what they had already been grooming and building, which is a great offensive line, a great defensive line, and added a couple wide receivers. And now all of a sudden you got a good team. So how teams are built and how teams are structured is important. But I thought it was important to make sure, here's another school. And how bad is UCLA? You got to really think, how bad is UCLA? UCLA lost a home game to Indiana. Now, here's another thought, right? How did Indiana get so good? Indiana's James Madison's players. The head coach at James Madison went to Indiana, and all those kids went with him. James Madison was a great school last year, was a great team to bet on, and now they're in Indiana, and they're all playing well over there. So how does all this stuff work out? Well, UCLA has a terrible head coach. He's not really a head coach, even though he is. And the adjustments being made to UCLA are not enough. So they play LSU this week. What was the score? And I got to look it up just to make sure that I don't misspeak here. What was the score when let me go back here to see if I can find it. Maybe it's just faster if I do it a different way. Well, I can do it this way. Yeah. Oh, that's NFL. I don't want that. I want college. What I'm trying to show you is college football. And here we go. Let's go to UCLA. So Texas Tech, Tulsa, Utah, UCLA. All right. So UCLA played Hawaii. You remember? First game. And that game, UCLA, here we go. UCLA was -8. They won 31-24. But if you go back and dig into the stats, there was a very poor game for them. They had to come from behind to actually win the game. So that's number one. Then they played Indiana. They were -2 against Indiana, and they got beat 42-13. So this week they play LSU. LSU, I think, is -24. LSU is going to be able to name the number that they want to score in this game. If they want to win by 50, they can win by 50. So my point is this. If you go back and then you go say, let's go look at Hawaii for a second. Hawaii played that UCLA game. They lost by 7. And Hawaii's not a good football team. They just played Sam Houston State, who's not a good football team, and they lost by 4 points. So I think I that's not right. Hold on a minute. Yeah, that's the wrong thing. Hold on a minute. Let me give you the right thing. We're looking at the wrong stuff here. I've got a spreadsheet that's the wrong column. So Hawaii played UCLA, lost 16-13. That's the real deal. And then they played Sam Houston State, and it was 31-13 they got beat. So that's an indication of how good UCLA is. They beat a team by 3 points that just got beat by Sam Houston State by 18 points. Sam Houston State. So now you have a team in LSU who's 24-point favorites. I am so waiting for this to get to 23.5. I'm hoping it gets to 23.5. If not, I'll have to bet it at 24. But again, bet good numbers. But I'm expecting a more than 30-point blowout in this game. My point is, how far do you adjust these teams? Because I think the traditional conservative approach is not there with this kind of stuff. You've got outliers, right? I think you can sit there and go Florida State, UCLA, maybe Florida. Some of these teams are outliers. You know, they're not any good. Well, even like Air Force, right? So Air Force. If I go pull up Air Force, let's go find Air Force. So Air Force played Merrimack. Merrimack is one of the worst FCS teams. They were 21-point favorites, won 21-6. Then they played San Jose State. They were 10-point favorites, and they lost 17-10, 17-7. Lost by 10 as 10-point favorites. And then they played Baylor. They were getting 21, lost 31-3. So do you just make 1.5 point adjustments to Air Force? No, you got to drop Air Force 3 points a game, 4 points, and get them down to where things are. Because when you make that adjustment, you're ahead of the sports book. You're ahead of the traditional approach. And then you can capitalize on a spot where you can find LSU go name their number, 30-plus point win, 40-plus point win against the UCLA. That's what I'm getting at, is numbers matter when you're betting spreads. They matter tremendously. And you need to have good numbers. So how do you have good numbers? You make the appropriate adjustments and you make them correctly. I thought maybe I would share some of the stuff that I have in terms of notes. I wrote down some notes like FSU. Is this a team that's quit? I don't know. Do they quit on their head coach? Does the head coach still have the locker room? Are they at rock bottom now in terms of where you power rank them? So that was a question that came through my head. I thought, some of these other things, James Madison, all those kids went to Indiana. Well, they don't look as good. They're not as good. They play North Carolina, so maybe North Carolina is the right side because of that. Liberty's not looked good. East Carolina's been really good. They just can't. They got a turnover problem. So if they can control the turnovers, East Carolina's probably a good spot. Utah this week. Cam Rising's going to play. I think Cam Rising's worth about 4 points to the line. So we're seeing some of that number change right now. We got Louisville playing Georgia Tech. It's a bad spot for Georgia Tech. So I equated UCLA to as bad as Mississippi State, as bad as Purdue. Those teams, UCLA is not any good. Those teams are not any good. So I just thought that some of that might be a little bit of value to you. The NFL notes that I made so far is Tennessee makes mistakes. Can the Jets capitalize off the mistakes that Tennessee makes? The Jets defense not as good as we previously thought, but Rodgers looks good. The Giants are placing Cleveland, and Cleveland's got a pretty good defense, not just pretty good, a real good defense. How are the Giants going to do against a really good defense? Washington Commanders, they make every team look good, their defense. Green Bay wants to run the football, right? Especially with the quarterback being hurt. Tennessee's interior line, defensive line, the interior guys, the defensive tackles, they're pretty stout. So if you want to run on them, that's pretty tough. Miami's making a long road trip out to Seattle, and they're having a backup quarterback start, Skylar Thompson. Does Seattle have Kenneth Walker in this game? I think that's an important spot. Arizona will not be able to put pressure on Detroit like they did against the Rams. And if you want to beat Arizona's defense, just line up and run the ball. The Rams have 4 out of their 5 starting offensive linemen having issues, and you got the 2 receivers are hurt, so the Rams are in big trouble. Kupp and Nakua is not playing. For Cincinnati, is T. Higgins going to play? Trying to look at some of these other things. Pittsburgh's defense is playing at a super high level right now. The Chargers quarterback was hurt in the last game. I think the MRI came back negative, but he's going to be limited mobility for this game. The Indianapolis Colts defense has been on the field for a long, long time, like 30, 40 minutes each game. They just can't get off the field. Carolina's got a quarterback change, and Kansas City, Pacheco's not going to play. I know they signed Hunt today, and Brown's still not going to play. So I haven't made any of these bets yet. It's just notes, and normally by now I've already been made, 3, 4, 5 football bets. And I know numbers are moving and stuff, but I just haven't made any yet. But once I do, I'll start releasing them on the show. Tomorrow I'll probably have good football bets. So hopefully, Marty, there was some good information for you on football. Hopefully some of these baseball bets are coming in. And guys, like always, follow me on Twitter. Go to my website, mlb-daily.com. Sign up. It's $100. Get the information, get the plays, and we go from there. So let's have a good night. Time to sign off, and I will see you tomorrow Wednesday, 6:15. We got a lot more to talk about, and I'm sure I'll have football plays tomorrow. All right, guys, have a good night.